6 months out of the year, I will spend writing the sacred teachings of self-knowledge. Then the other 6 months, I will spend interpreting them and writing them in English.
Are these books available? Where do we get them?
Yes, they will be available this year.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I have so far 43 scrolls that's been written, and most of the scrolls are 12 feet long. And then 15 books written in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, which is meditation books that people is able to meditate. Let's just say if you have an alcohol problem, I have a book where you can that's full of hieroglyphs that you can meditate, and it aids and assists you to get off the alcohol. I have books that if your children is taking Ritalin or HDD, I help aids these little flashcards assist them in getting off the Ritalin and get their mind back to where it needs to be.
Do you have any plans to teach how to read hieroglyphs? Because you're one of the few people,
Yes,
especially in
yes,
America.
yes. I have plans to sit down with those that are willing to learn the hieroglyphs and to be able to use them to help themselves and their family and the community around them. Because remember, the Greek word is hieroglyphs, but the Kemetic word is the metuneter, and those are called the holy writings. So the hieroglyphs are not just glyphs that you just take from a book. You got to really sit, you got to really be still, and you got to listen to that inner peace, that inner mind that allows you to learn about self. So anytime I do write the hieroglyphs, they are for me to better myself and get closer to that divine essence.
Does that power that comes from the word, does it have to be in hieroglyphs? Is it just because it's a really old language?
Well, this is where all the masters, we have to go back 36,000 years now. See, the masters from all over from the East came to study in Egypt. This is before Christianity. This is before Buddhism. This is before, any type of written language that, well, before any type of written language that would assist you to get into the higher consciousness of the world at that time.
Are you implying that other languages might not help us reach higher consciousness?
No, I am not implying that. Take, for instance, being a Buddhist. If you are a Buddhist, there is certain knowledge which is given to you and practices that are given to you to elevate your spirit. And in that language, if you go to that language with truth, go through that doctrine with truth, go through that etymology in which they have with truth, then you will be able to elevate your consciousness. But if you're just faking, if you're trying to be a Buddhist one day, but you have a power struggle with the world and going to work, paying bills, getting your children up in the morning for school, then you are doing half the work. So you have to be able to take yourself out of the world, whatever you may believe in, and study that higher consciousness, study that higher power.
So this could work with modern languages like English too.
English is what we call in the higher learning, is a bastardized language for the simple reason is one word means so many things. It doesn't get to the truth. I can say to my daughter, I love you, but turn around with the same English word and scold her for a reason that doesn't need to be scolded. So when we speak of the English language, we have to understand where it came from. Or when we speak in the English spiritual language, we know that it's more Greek. So when we say wisdom, we know that's Sophia. So then we have to use that word and put it in a feminalistic metaphor, because there is no really in English, there is no words that will get you consciously into the metaphysical realm. You always have to go back to older cultures before English was there.
When their words were more precise and only meant one thing.
When the words were able to stimulate the conscious mind, the higher power, your higher self.
So this leads me to a related question. Was English, modern French, other languages, were they created to produce numerology here? I'm throwing this in as well. Were they created to somewhat control us? Were the Bibles and stuff translated into English as a way to hide certain truths behind certain words? And what does this have to do with numerology? Was the language created to fit numerology, or do the numerological patterns just show up naturally in the languages?
Well, the pattern of the universe is full of numbers, but we have to go back to, again, the beginning of the knowledge is within sight of man. That's why it says, man, know thyself. It doesn't say man try to know the universe, or man try to know the sun, or man try to know the moon, or or man try to know numbers. Okay, to keep it on a safe place, when we go back to the Romans and the Greeks, the Chaldeans, the Hebrews, we understand that that language and that knowledge was for a set people. Okay, it was for, especially going into the higher knowledge of self. That was for those priests at that time. So those priests at that time were able to say and understand the weather pattern of the stars, astrological signs. So those numbers were meant to stimulate your higher self to be able to get away from your lower self or the things that is going on around you. Now, when we deal with those type of numerology or astrology or cosmology, we have to understand that those priests were dedicated to their craft. See, a priest at that time wasn't able to go into having a marriage or having a children. You gave that 52 years or the 42 years over to the priesthood to learn what the masters had learned. And it still continues today in certain sets and in certain countries. There is an underground priesthood that does not come out to this finite world.
You mean literally under the earth, underground, or metaphorically?
In the temples, you know, in Egypt, there's a place there, a location that has 1,500 rooms above ground and 1,500 rooms below ground.
That's
Literally.
a lot of rooms.
That's a lot of rooms. And this is where most of the masters used to be in and teach at that time. So now we're talking about we're talking about 50, 62, yeah, 6,200 years ago.
How do you know the precise times?
I've studied. I have the books.
Okay, so you mentioned 36,000 years earlier. Is that the age?
36,000.
Is that the age of the Earth?
No, Earth is much more older than that. In masonry, in the higher of masonry, we talk about the 66 trillion years of man falling from hermaphrodite.
Trillion years, 66 trillion years.
Years of the fall of man.
That's an unfathomable number.
That's an unfathomable number. Just like our death and birth, is an unfathomable number, but it's very short. We're only here for a very short time.
A lot of people think the Masons or the Jesuits, and a lot of people think those are kind of the same organizations. We talked about that a little bit last time. But a lot of people think that they went in and changed the Bible or wrote it for their own purposes or wrote it just for the purposes of deceiving us and stuff. So if the Masons are behind the Bible, and you can jump in if they are or not, why would they allude to 6,000 years? Why would they hide the length? Wouldn't it be more impressive to have a trillion year, 66 trillion year reign?
Well, you have to go off of, again, the fall of man. It's not nothing that they hid. I mean, even inside the Bible, if you want to talk about the Jesuits, the Jesuit priesthood and the Masonry is two different belief systems there. So when you speak of the 66 trillion years, or when I speak of the 66 trillion years of man falling from hermaphrodite, you can find that in the book of Genesis, where it talks about the separation of man and woman, where it talks about let us make man in our image and in our likeness. And so man, he created he, them. So not to go too far into it, but they secretly hid certain messages inside the Bible to be able to decode, or only they would be able to decode what the world and the length of time that man has been here. But it's for a certain reason. But you can't leave out the Hebrew book also. You have to put that Hebrew inside there because of the Jesuit priests learned from the Hebrew. That's where it all started anyway.
How come we see so much overlap in the Jesuits and Freemasons? Can you be both?
um, the Jesuit priesthood don't refer to themselves as Freemasons, and nor does a Freemason able to be a Jesuit priest, not unless he is conferred over to that knowledge. And most of them are not conferred over to that knowledge because they have too many things going on in their life. Now, a Jesuit priest is a priest because of the length of time which he has studied.
Are they different truths? Or is one of them wrong?
Well, one deals with science and one deals with, the hidden knowledge. One is, deals with occultism, metaphysics, and one, deals with the metaphor, the science, what we can prove. It's almost like being a Gnostic and an atheist.
Okay, okay. So what was the significance of 36,000 years?
The significance of 36,000 years is the writing dating back the temple writings on the walls in Karnak, which is in Egypt, and the tombs.
That's how old
And
they are.
Yes, yes, we can go all the way back. Even if you want to go back to the Sumerian writings, if you want to go back to the Atlanteans, but man coming out of the darkness was 36,000 years. Most people want to put a time on those pyramids, but they understand that at one time those pyramids were, well, the Sphinx was covered with water.
So that leads into another question. Probably one of the most popular ideas right now in the conspiracy world is that there are cyclical destruction events, and a lot of people are honing in on the dates of the Black Death, the
Mm-hmm.
plague, as being actually a major destruction event with fire from the sky and crazy lightning storms and maybe a solar flare that basically ended much of civilization as we know it. Do you guys have knowledge of these cycles? And are they true?
Yes, we do have a book that talks about the cycles of life and the destruction of life. But to get to the truth, you must, become that archaeologist that goes out and search. We have temples off the coast of India in Sri Lanka that's underwater, pyramids. We have temples off the coast of Japan that's underwater. We have temples off the coast of China that's underwater. Okay. We have the in South America, most of the Amazon and the pyramids that you find there were underwater at one time. And so if you take let's just say if you, and also in the Sahara Desert in Africa, they found a ocean there that has bones of whales. So we know that an ocean flowed through there at one time, all over Africa, that higher the upper part of Africa.
In America too, we know Utah was underwater.
Utah was underwater. We have the Dakotas.
So
Um,
are we talking about one major flood here, like Noah's flood, or is this a cyclical thing?
those are cycles. Those are the 26,000 year cycle. You have the 26,000 year cycle, and you have the 12,000 year cycle, and you have a 2,000 year cycle. Now, leading up to that cycle, those cycles is when the planets line up. Now, once those planet lines up, then you'll get the floods. You'll get more of the fires. You'll get the damnation of people's thinking, you know, and what's happening now, the wars that is going on. Those are just something that you can't get around because of the planetary lining up.
And you said they're lining up right now. Right.
So they started lining up in 2012.
And that has
And
to do with the end of the world theory thing in 2012.
no, that wasn't the end of the world theory. What it is learning or understanding the planetarials lining up to be able to let you know, giving you a warning, hey, this is what's going to be happening. There's going to be wars. There's going to be father that's going to be against their own son, mother that's going to be against their own daughters. There's going to be children against their own family members. There's going to be flooding. There's going to be destruction. All of this is due to the planets lining up.
26,000 years seems a little bit long to me. Are there smaller cycles of destruction within that?
Yes, there's only destructions because of I should say, certain meteorites hitting the Earth. You know, that's destruction. But when you talk about plagues and all that, that is man's doing, getting away from the foundation of the Creator.
Well, a lot of people are saying it wasn't actually a plague. Like if you read the accounts from that time, again, they're talking about like fire in the sky and crazy lightning storms and melted mountains and floods of mud. And so they're saying that history was changed to call it a plague, but really it was a destruction event basically from above.
No, it was a plague. I mean, a plague is something when everybody dies. So when you talk about that type of plague, you have to understand when the conquistadors came over to the South America, they brought that plague with them and wiped out a nation, millions of people because of that plague. So that wasn't nothing falling from the sky. There was actually people dying from that.
So could they be different though? So you're just saying the Black Death was literally a virus.
Yes.
It's interesting because one of the more popular theories in the health world now, the alternative health world, not necessarily the conspiracy world, is this thing called terrain theory, where they're blaming the major outbreaks of viruses, not bacteria, viruses. They're blaming that either on electromagnetic interference in the modern age or in past age, they're blaming it on solar flares and sunspots and the sun's energy messing with our electromagnetic everything in this world and causing disease outbreaks.
When it comes to those theories and when it comes to truth, I stay in my own lane. But I do, if there was someone with that type of theory or knowledge, I would tell them, let's go forward. Let's go, toe to toe. You bring your knowledge, you bring your theory, and I'm going to bring mine. And let's see which one is right. See, because if you speak of these theories and you speak of that, you should be able to heal any individual that is sick from these plagues.
But you say you basically can heal with the power, especially with hieroglyphs. That was a big part of our conversation last time, where you've had some
Yeah,
remarkable.
I don't doubt what I'm capable of doing. I know what I'm capable of doing.
But wouldn't that be an environmental effect causing the so-called virus?
How is writing hieroglyphs helping somebody psychologically their sickness? I'm not I have nothing to do with the hieroglyphs. The metronetter has nothing to do with the environment. This is spiritual.
But I mean, the environment of the person, doesn't it physically change the cells, the DNA of the person?
No, this is again, we're talking spiritual. When you say DNA, you are talking we're talking their blood type. We're talking about the how should I say it?